Hello, my name is Dr. Aidan Elliott and welcome to this summary of William Shakespeare's Hamlet. The very first words of this play are, "Who's there?" followed by, "Nay, answer me, stand and unfold yourself." These are important words because unfold yourself means to reveal your identity. And this play is dominated by people hiding their true intentions whilst others try various ways to expose them. In the opening scene, the ghost of the recently deceased king is walking the ramparts of Elsinore Castle. Horatio thinks that the ghost might speak to Hamlet, who is his son. In the next scene, the new king, Claudius, announces his marriage to Gertrude and acknowledges a military threat from Fortinbras of Norway. He then allows Laertes, the son of his main courtier Polonius, to return to France. And only then does he address Hamlet. Now this is a snub because he's dealt with a courtier before addressing a prince. And when Hamlet is then miserable and surly, Claudius berates him for excessively mourning the death of his father. It is clear that Hamlet despises Claudius and wishes that he could die, saying, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew." Horatio then tells Hamlet about seeing the ghost of his father, and he's shocked, and so they arrange to meet on the castle battlements later that night so Hamlet can see the ghost for himself. Ophelia is the daughter of the courtier Polonius, and she's been having a relationship with Hamlet. Her brother Laertes tells Ophelia this relationship is doomed because the royal family will choose who Hamlet marries, and she must be careful. Polonius then advises Laertes at length on how to behave when he goes to France. And after he leaves, Polonius then instructs Ophelia to avoid Hamlet completely. This will have disastrous consequences. Horatio and Hamlet then meet the ghost, who implores Hamlet to follow. Horatio tries to stop him, saying that the ghost may change its shape and draw you into madness. Nevertheless, Hamlet follows, and the ghost tells Hamlet that Claudius poisoned him and demands that Hamlet take revenge. Hamlet then decides to feign madness, saying he will put an antic disposition on. And this thought may well be prompted by Horatio's earlier fears about the ghost drawing him into madness. It is not unusual to see characters having thoughts that have been prompted by other characters' words. Meanwhile, Polonius sends a servant to spy on Laertes in France. And then Ophelia tells Polonius that Hamlet came to her room and appears to have gone mad, an immediate confirmation that he's carried out the plan of putting an antic disposition on. Polonius immediately concludes that Hamlet's gone mad because he's in love with Ophelia and is being kept away from her. Claudius now summons Rosencrantz and Guildenstern to spy on Hamlet and to work out why he's acting strangely. They are both old friends of Hamlet from his youth. Polonius then says he knows why Hamlet has gone mad, but he will tell the king and queen later, after they've heard from the ambassadors who the king sent to Norway. The ambassadors reveal that the problem with Norway has been solved. Fortinbras will attack Poland instead. Polonius finally tells the king and queen that Hamlet's gone mad because Polonius stopped him from seeing Ophelia, and he'll prove this theory by arranging for Ophelia to meet Hamlet and they can spy on them. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern now talk to Hamlet, but because he knows them well as old friends, he realises that the king had sent them. Now this is important because Hamlet now knows that they're doing the king's bidding and cannot be trusted. Hamlet then meets a travelling company of actors, and when one of the actors performs a speech and cries over the fate of Queen Hecuba, he finds himself feeling guilty that he has been too rational about the death of his own father. But the speech does give him an idea. Perhaps Claudius will unwittingly reveal his guilt if he watches a play called The Murder of Gonzago, where a character poisons the king. He asks the players to stage it, saying, "The play's the thing wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king." Claudius and Polonius arrange for Ophelia to meet Hamlet, whilst they observe from a hiding place. Hamlet delivers the to be or not to be soliloquy, where he talks about why people choose to live rather than kill themselves, and then speaks to Ophelia. He soon becomes infuriated because she rejects him once again by handing back gifts he'd given her. He storms off, and, having watched all this, Claudius makes plans to get Hamlet out of the country by sending him to England. Polonius also suggests setting up a meeting between Hamlet and the Queen, which he'll observe from a hiding place, because he is still convinced Hamlet is in love with Ophelia. Hamlet briefs the actors to speak as naturally as possible and to make the scenario look real. And it works. When the player king is poisoned, Claudius reacts by getting up from his seat and storming out. Hamlet is now convinced of Claudius's guilt. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern arrive and say the Queen wants to speak to Hamlet. This is the meeting that Polonius plans to spy on. And finally, Hamlet then commits himself to take revenge, saying, "Now shall I drink hot blood." Claudius says again that Hamlet must be sent to England, but then admits to us that he did kill his own brother, the former king, and he prays for forgiveness. At this point, Hamlet comes in and sees Claudius and prepares to kill him, but delays because Claudius is praying, because if he kills him now, his soul would go to heaven, and Hamlet wants Claudius's soul to burn in hell. Hamlet then confronts Gertrude, and when she shouts for help, he mistakenly kills Polonius. He shows his mother then 2 miniature paintings, one of his father and one of Claudius, and asks how she could marry this awful man after marrying his father. This outburst prompts the ghost of his father to appear, but only to Hamlet, and tells him to focus on his task of revenge and to stop berating his mother. Gertrude, of course, thinks Hamlet is mad because she can't see the ghost, but Hamlet reassures her that he's only pretending to be mad. He then drags Polonius' body out of the room. Claudius then arrives and learns of Polonius' death. Note that he says here, "Where is your son?" It's no longer my son or our son, and he again says that he must send Hamlet away. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern find Hamlet, but he then refuses to say where Polonius' body is. Hamlet eventually tells them where the body can be found, and is finally sent to England, accompanied by Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. But Claudius reveals to us that he has a sinister plan. The letters that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are carrying have instructions for the English to execute Hamlet the moment he arrives. Hamlet then encounters Fortinbras's army marching to Poland and discovers that they're going to fight for a piece of land that's not big enough to bury all of the soldiers who will die fighting for it. This comparison with Fortinbras makes him feel inadequate and makes him resolve to focus on taking deadly revenge. My thoughts be bloody or nothing worth. But is it too late? Ophelia then enters and sings to the Queen about love, rejection and death. It seems that the death of her father Polonius has sent her mad. And after Ophelia leaves, her brother Laertes arrives back from France and wants revenge for his father's death. Claudius says he will prove that he isn't responsible for Polonius's death. And then back comes Ophelia, singing of death and remembrance. Laertes is distraught. Claudius says Laertes must now ask around the court to determine for himself who is guilty, and then, where the offence is, let the great axe fall. Now in the next scene, Horatio is met by a man with a letter, telling them that Hamlet has escaped from the ship that was taking him to England, and now wants Horatio to come and meet him. Laertes has now been convinced that Hamlet is to blame for his father's death, and Claudius has told him to relax because he has a plan to deal with Hamlet. Of course, he doesn't reveal what that plan is, but we know it is to execute Hamlet in England. But then Claudius gets a letter saying Hamlet's back in Denmark, and this delights Laertes because he can now take revenge himself. And he plots with Claudius to stage a fencing match between himself and Hamlet using an illegally sharpened sword that's also laced with poison. And for good measure, Claudius suggests providing Hamlet with a poisoned drink. But then the queen arrives with terrible news. Ophelia is dead. She has drowned. Laertes is angered once more and leaves even more focused on revenge. Hamlet and Horatio then watch a gravedigger dig up skeletons to create a new grave for a funeral. One of the skulls he digs up is of Hamlet's favourite jester Yorick. This prompts Hamlet to reflect on the way death has a way of making all people equal. But then Hamlet realises that this funeral is for Ophelia. Laertes is so grief-stricken that he jumps into the grave and embraces Ophelia's body. Hamlet is enraged and comes forward saying he loved Ophelia more than anyone else. The two young men fight and have to be separated, and Hamlet leaves. Claudius then says to Laertes that they must put their plan to kill Hamlet into action immediately. In the final scene, Hamlet begins by telling Horatio that he found the letters Claudius had sent and rewrote them, instructing the English to kill Rosencrantz and Guildenstern rather than him. But then he managed to escape from the ship when pirates attacked them, and that is how he was able to return to Denmark safely, whilst Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are on their way to death in England. They then stage the fencing match, but it does not go as planned. Hamlet wins the first two bouts before a terrible accident happens. When Hamlet refuses a drink because he's not thirsty, the Queen celebrates by drinking from the poisoned cup. And then when they draw the third bout, Laertes panics. He thinks he's going to miss his chance to kill Hamlet, and so he stabs him whilst he's not looking. They scuffle, swords get exchanged, and Hamlet stabs Laertes with his own poisoned sword. And as the poison takes effect on the Queen and she dies, Laertes reveals that Claudius is the guilty party. And Hamlet finally acts. He stabs Claudius and then makes him drink the poisoned cup, and Claudius dies. Laertes forgives Hamlet and he also dies. And finally the poison kills Hamlet, but not before he insists that Horatio tells the world the truth about what has happened, and adds that he wants Fortinbras to become the next king. And as the story closes, Fortinbras, the brave and fearless warrior, arrives fresh from conquering Poland and we assume will become the next king of Denmark. The irony is that the man who fought for land worth next to nothing in Poland wins the whole of Denmark without lifting a finger. Ultimately, it was Hamlet who, in seeking revenge in his own way, brought about the downfall of the Danish government. So I hope that this video has given you an insight into this great story and that it will be useful when revising for exams or when reading or watching the play. Give a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video and subscribe now so that you don't miss any of my future posts.